What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the Driver Mod. Today we're going to be doing an oil change on the GT350. It's been a year and about 10 days since the last oil change on the car. We're using Amsoil though, so we know we're good to go. Before we get started on this oil change and this how-to video, I did just want to let everyone know we just got done with Mustangs at Daytona 2022. It was a fantastic event. Tons of awards, tons of prizes, a lot of great vendors, sponsors, venues, the host, the volunteer team, all were fantastic. I can't wait to be there again next year, and we hope to see you there as well. We're going to keep growing this event. This was the 4th year of the event, and it's grown exponentially each year. So this year I was a sponsor. I was representing Amsoil and the entire Driver Mod Performance business. So shout out to Jeff, the entire Mustangs at Daytona team. Thank you. We'll be back next year. So as I stated earlier in the video, we are using Amsoil Signature Series 5W50. I've been using this in this car since 400 miles. The car just hit over 23,000 and a couple hundred miles this week with the event. My car is a 2016, so we have the spin-on filter. Due to the small volume of the GT350s with the spin-on filter, Amsoil does not make a spin-on filter variant for those early model GT350s. However, they do make a cartridge filter replacement that is just as good as the FL 2087, which sometimes can be hard to find, for one, and two, can be somewhat expensive. This filter with your membership is going to cost you between $15 and $30, depending on if you're getting free shipping or not. I've been using these filters in the GT350s that I do oil changes for 4+ years now. Naturally aspirated cars, supercharged cars, track cars, street cars. This filter holds up to it all, just like the OEM filter. I've never had one filter show signs of collapse or failure. So this video again, specifically as pertain to the cars with the spin-on filter, so the early Gen 1 engines. You're gonna need 10 quarts of Amsoil 5W50 synthetic oil. And for those individuals that are worried about their warranty, warranty claims and having their warranty voided, the spec for the Mustang, and in this case the GT350, the universal Ford spec, is right here on the bottle itself. So you can be rest assured your warranty will be intact using this oil. I worked at a dealership for 2 years and we never had one warranty claim kicked for anyone that used this oil or any other oil outside of the Motorcraft oil. As long as it's 5W50 and it's changed regularly, you're good to go. In my opinion, this is the best oil for this car. I've tested it on track in the hot, humid Florida climate. The most I've ever pushed this oil specifically in my car was 6,000 miles in a 10-month span. Like I said earlier, we're over a year on this oil change right now as we speak. Now, one of the other arguments that I do constantly have to explain over the internet, social media, phone calls that I get about the oil is, if you look at the oil bottle, there is no API certified donut, which is a valid concern. However, again, the spec, API, SP, SM+, SN, this oil covers, meets, and exceeds all those specs. The API donut does not void your warranty if you use this oil. If you look at an original BMW engine oil bottle, you will note the spec on the bottle, but however, there is no API certified donut. That donut does not void your warranty if you use an oil that does not have that donut. You can look all over this bottle and nowhere will you see the API SA donut. Again, it just lists the specs that it meets. And this is the OEM oil that we used at BMW at the dealership. Never voided any warranties for using this oil in the BMWs. So, just to clarify any sort of misconception out there, now let's get the car ready for this oil change. So to do an oil change on your GT350, go ahead and get it set up on your jack stands, quick jacks, lift, whatever you got to use. Go ahead and remove the driver's side front wheel. This is going to give you a lot of easier access to the oil filter, whether you've got the spin-on or cartridge filter. You're going to want to do that step. So we've got our wheel off, set to the side. If you are watching this video, we're also going to show you how to do the cleanest GT350 oil change that you can possibly do, because there's a lot of horror stories about taking the car to dealerships and shops and the oil filter when it comes off makes a mess, and then now you've got oil all underneath the on the skid plate, makes a mess in your garage, and while you can take it back and they'll take care of it and clean it up. It just relieves all the stress of that potentially happening by doing it, following a couple of the tricks that we have for you. So we've got our car prepped, ready to go. Got it on our jack stand. So first thing you're gonna do, go ahead and remove that oil fill cap. That's gonna allow the best possible drain as far as letting the oil breathe out through the car when it comes out of the drain plug. I always like to do the oil filter first. So next, we're gonna do the oil filter. You've got the spin-on filter. You're gonna make sure you have this cup. It should have came with the car if you're the original owner. You can find these on Amazon. That'll work just the same, but in order to properly torque the spin-on filter, which is an absolute must, no matter how tight you try and get it by hand, it is not enough. You must torque the filter down, or it will back off at the most inopportune time, leave a mess, potentially damage the engine, or cause a catastrophic failure. So first thing you want to do is remove that little filter access panel. Just going to need a T30 socket. Go ahead and remove that and set it to the side. Brush it off a little bit. A lot of sand, dirt, and debris likes to build up on the under shield of this car. You'll see spin-on filters right there. We have access both at the side and beneath the filter. Before you release the filter, you're gonna make sure you have some shop towels and rags, just in case. You're gonna want a large plastic bag. That's gonna go over the filter once we release it and break the seal, and catch the majority of the oil that comes out. And then some sort of filter pliers or whatever is going to work best for you. You can try and use the oil filter wrench cap to release this. But once you have all of those positioned, and then of course your drain pan, just in case any does miss the bag or whatnot. Again, this is going to be to catch most of the oil possible and reduce the mess that can be made. So this is the best angle of the filter we can give you. Just use a variety of filter claws or bands, wrenches. Be careful you don't want to puncture the casing, because then you will have to use the plastic bag earlier than expected. But just slowly release the filter. These filters do take a lot of force when properly torqued. You're going to want to back it off with the claw until it's loose enough to release by hand. Having the wheel off makes this job 100 times easier, because then you can sit in the wheel well, see what you're doing through the wheel well while you work the filter from below. All right, we've got this thing pretty much loosened up by hand, yeah, we've got it hand loose. So now simply bring the plastic bag over the entire filter housing. And then just work the filter from there. Plastic bag entirely wrapped around the filter. As long as you keep it up tight towards the filter spindle, and there goes the oil. The amount of oil that potentially needs to be cleaned up will be far less than what you're typically gonna see. And then just keep backing the filter off till it basically falls in the bag. There goes the filter. Just leave the bag over the spindle for a few more moments to really catch as much of that residual that's going to come out as possible. And as you can see, the oil is going straight into the bag. As you can see there, very, very little mess. We've got some oil on the harness, but absolutely none on the skid plate. We had a little bit on that bar, but all in all, not a mess. like you can possibly see. And as you can see, the filter straight into the bag. So the oil filter you'll need for the spin-on GT350 oil filter is the FL2069-ST. This is the only filter that I recommend using for this job, unlike the cartridge filter, because of its strength and rigidity that is required to torque this filter down to the proper torque levels. Really wouldn't trust any other filter. The cartridge filter is a totally different, scenario there. But to verify that you've got the right part, when you open that box, on top of the filter should be the Shelby Cobra badging with the installation torque on the top. Again, FL2069-ST. Go ahead and pull it out of the box, inspect it, make sure the gasket's there, make sure you don't have any obvious signs of damage, debris. Now we're gonna go ahead and take some of that oil residue, lubricate this seal. Once you lubricate the seal, go ahead and line the filter up with the spindle and spin it down by hand until it's flush with the adapter. Normally I would go through the wheel well with my other arm, but that's where the camera is. So now we've got it bottomed out with the block. Now the most important part of this entire job, other than adding the oil and draining the oil, is torquing this filter. So that's what we're gonna do next. Next thing, go ahead and grab your torque wrench, set it to 18 foot-pounds. The spec on the filter is between 16 and 18. I like to just set it on the high side. The best way I found to torque this filter, obviously you have your cap, 22mm shallow socket. It's gonna be 1/2 inch drive because we're using a 1/2 inch drive torque wrench, but depending on your drive, torque wrench, 3/8, whatever. Then we have a swivel immediately after the socket, and then like a 3-inch extension, and that'll give you the clearance outside of the wheel well, because you have to go through the wheel well for this portion, unless you have a direct flexible 22 or a smaller torque wrench. So for this application, this is how we're going to torque this. Insert the cup, make sure it's fully seated on the filter and flush, and then just begin tightening it down. I know it seemed excessive, but I've never had a filter even back off on me on the track. I make sure I torque them down every time. Right there, 18 foot-pounds. And then just give it a couple more bumps, just to fully compress that gasket and make sure it's at 18 foot-pounds, because when you hit 18 foot-pounds that first time, the gasket's not usually all the way compressed. So give it a couple more. And there we go. You didn't see the filter budge on that last one. So now we know we're fully up to 18 foot-pounds on the entire filter. And just go ahead and remove your cup and torque wrench adapters. Now this last portion we're going to show you here is just for ease of checking to make sure that the filter hasn't backed off. So go ahead and give the filter canister a good wipe down. A Sharpie or a permanent marker, and at top dead center on the filter, just draw a little arrow. So now all you have to do is just peek inside the wheel well. As long as that arrow is at top dead center and hasn't gone to the left, the filter hasn't backed off any. So now we're good to go ahead and drain the oil. To drain the oil now, you're gonna make sure you have a drain pan, but not just any drain pan. You're gonna want one that has a very deep basin, because the volume at which this 10 quarts comes out of this car, the drain plug is very thick, a good inch wide diameter. The oil comes out very fast. So you wanna make sure you have enough space as well as flow to make sure all that 10 quarts goes into the oil drain pan and doesn't overflow it, because it can't flow it because it can't take it fast enough. To drain the oil in the GT350, you have a 3/8 drive plug here at the back for the oil drain plug. However, in my experience, you really don't even need any tools. That's one of the best things about draining the oil in this car, is it's very simple. You just need to make sure you have the capacity that can take the volume. So position your drain pan so that the lip is about even with the drain plug, and then go ahead and you just rotate it until the plug comes out all the way and it starts to drip, and then you're going to want to pull it away really fast. So just kind of angle it up and out, and boom. As you can see how quickly and the amount of volume that comes out. But this drain pan is more than enough for this car. So now we're just gonna let that drain for about 10 minutes, make sure we get a nice solid drain. And we'll put the plug back in. It's been about 10 minutes. As you saw before we released it, this drain plug wasn't leaking. No need to replace it if you don't have a leaking one. This is still the original drain plug from brand new 2016, 23,000 miles later. Still using the same one. However, I do always recommend that you definitely inspect this O-ring, for one, and two, I do always keep a spare in my glove box just in case. But it was perfectly fine when we took it out. Go ahead and reinstall it, and then just tighten it down clockwise till it snaps in place. That's the other benefit of using a plug like this. No need to think about, did I over torque it? Did I not torque it enough? It goes into a groove, and that's all it needs to be. Just go ahead and give this area a little wipe down. There's gonna be some residual oil between the O-ring and the top of the plug, so do not mistake that for a leak either. But once we're all buttoned up and cleaned up down here, now we can go up top and add that Amsoil 5W50. All right, so now we'll go ahead and crack open our first quart. Now again, this oil is good for 1 year or 15,000 miles in severe applications, 25,000 miles in normal service applications. Because I track the vehicle, obviously that is part of the stipulations for severe service. Now on the GT350, the longest I've pushed this oil time-wise is actually this current oil change. We're sitting at a year and 10 days. Mileage-wise, personally, I did a sample that was 6,000 miles in 10 months, which included 6 full track days. Sent the oil off for a third-party analysis, and that oil came back solid. So I know the stuff is good and it lives up to every claim that it makes. I have no oil consumption at all with this car. The oil separators, I recently did a short little live stream to empty them out. I can't remember how long it had been since what I said in the video. I remembered at that time, but it was a very long time between checking the oil separators, and the amount of oil that was in the separator for how long it had been. I know cars that have 2 to 3 times as much the amount in that same time period in those separators. So this oil has done well for this car, and I've swapped everything else out on the car to the Amsoil product. They have transmission fluid, diff fluid, coolant, brake fluid. This car runs it all. So now we're just going to finish adding all 10 quarts of oil. Here's our 10th and final quart. Make sure your oil funnel's done draining. Grab a rag, put it under the oil funnel as you take it out, and then put your oil cap back on and secure it. Now we're going to go ahead and get inside the vehicle and do the oil priming procedure before we do our first start and check for leaks. Alright, so after doing an oil change, what I like to do is prime the oil system just to get oil into the main components of the engine before that first startup. So in order to do that, have the car completely off, take your accelerator pedal foot, plant the throttle all the way to the floor, and hold it throughout the duration of this process. Next, clutch all the way in, hold it through the duration of this process. Make sure you're in neutral, and then push to start, let go, and the car will crank and crank and crank. It will not fire. It'll build oil pressure. Just like that. And it'll auto shut off. Real quickly, check the filter area for leaks. Obviously the floor, got none, so now we're gonna go ahead and fire it up and do that running pressure check. Obviously pay close attention to that filter. That's where, if you are gonna have an oil leak under running conditions, it's gonna be at that filter. Give the drain plug a quick peek. Looks good, no dripping or residual. I'm just gonna let it run to build some temperature before we shut it down and button it up. The car is definitely happy with the Amsoil in the car. Once the car's running for about 10 minutes, you can go ahead and shut it down, and you're done with the oil change portion of the service. You're just gonna button everything back up, put the filter skid plate access covered door back on the car, put your wheel back on the car, torque it, get it off your jack stands, and then don't forget to reset the oil light and check your oil level. I'll leave a card at the top portion of the screen on how to do the oil life reset if you can't figure it out. Don't forget to, again, torque your wheel. Thank you for watching this oil change video, how-to instructional video on the GT350. I've had a lot of GT350 owners been asking me for a video like this. Hope the tips and tricks that we showed you about the filter marking, as well as the torquing of it, and then how to get the filter off without making a mess, helped you out. Again, that method will work for both the canister filter and the spin-on filter. Don't forget, if you'd like to order some Amsoil products for your GT350, I'll leave a link down below. I'd appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss a future upload. Comment down below, let me know how this video helped you and how it could be improved. Leave a like and thumbs up on this video if it did help you out. All feedback is greatly appreciated. But that's it for this instructional video on how to do an oil change on the GT350, and we'll see you on the next video here at the Driver Mod.